This is the third section of the videos. So we've gone through mindset, we've gone through nutrition, and this final one is training. So we're going to cover quite a few things around training. The main topics will be: what is your goal, how often to train, commitment, learning new exercises, learning the correct form, muscle fatigue, genetics, body types, your overall training, and training plans. The first topic is: what is your goal? So every point that I make in this video is largely dependent on what your goal is, because in terms of your training, there are a lot of variations depending on your goal. So you'll have to have a solid goal in mind before you start. And if you're not sure, I always tell people to prioritize. So let's say you might have three main goals of fat loss, muscle building, and overall health. Just prioritize one for now. Then you can really aim at that one thing with all of your focus and energy. So your training should completely reflect your goal. There are 5 main goals generally most people will look at picking or prioritizing. The first one is overall health. So that's general fitness training, general strength training for the whole body, avoiding processed foods, and just cooking as many meals as possible, as opposed to eating out or eating fast food. But just generally getting into the gym and moving around 4 to 6 times a week. That is what I do class as health as your goal. Another one that someone might pick is fat loss for a specific event or a specific occasion. I like to call it fat loss for a photograph. For example, going on holiday or wedding or some sort of gathering. This is a much shorter goal. They have a lot shorter time length. So the intensity has to be a lot higher, and there has to be a strong calorie manipulation. So a lot of tweaks need to be made in the calories that you're eating to find exactly what works for you as early as possible, and then be extremely strict with those calories. We're talking anything from 4 to 15 weeks is classed as short-term goal. The next one is fat loss for long-term. So with this, people get to try out a lot of different types of training, a lot of different types of diets, and everything's not as dramatic. And people get to learn to understand their body properly so they can see what will benefit them most and then work with those benefits to achieve their fat loss for a long period of time. Because the ones who achieve fat loss for a photograph, as soon as they come off their extreme training of high intensity, very frequent amount of sessions per week, relatively low calories, relatively strict carbohydrates or strict macros, as soon as they come off that diet, 5 weeks later, they will put weight back on again. So it's a cycle of up, down, up, down. Whereas fat loss for long term is understanding your body and figuring out a plan from the nutrition side and training side that will benefit you long term and help you stick with it throughout your whole life. Another option that people will consider as their main goal is muscle building. So this is just having a slight calorie surplus, so just consuming slightly more calories than you're burning per day to ensure that you have enough energy to help the muscle build. Playing around with supplements possibly, and having a set routine for your strength training so that you're working each muscle group as per its needs. And you might prioritize certain muscle groups that need to be trained. It's also important to train the opposite muscle groups equally, depending on any muscle imbalances that you may have or may be trying to avoid. And the last option is an athlete. So you may be aiming for the top percentage of whatever it is that you do. In that case, you just have to put in the work rate. You want to periodize your year in terms of when your competitions are, if you plan on doing competitions that year. Training sessions are generally longer because your focus is on what you can achieve and not your appearance. So burning a certain amount of calories and then leaving is not your goal. It's learning a specific skill which just comes from experience. So your training sessions are longer, more frequent. Your work rate is through the roof. Any sport, you need to put in the hours. Ability plays into it, but work rate is everything. It definitely helps to have a coach that understands your progress and the route you're trying to take. But this video is mainly going to be for general training. So I don't have a recommendation for what I think you should prioritize in. It entirely depends on what you enjoy and what you want. Just a last quick side note. I am a personal trainer. I'm based mainly in a gym with typical gym equipment, but your goal may mean that you never need to step inside of a gym. I often encourage clients to get back into some sort of activity that they used to do outside of the gym, such as football, basketball, badminton, outdoor running. But this is just down to your preference. If the gym feels like a boring chore that you have to do just to look in a certain way, then I would reconsider how I'm spending my time exercising and reconsider if a gym is what I want to do, because how long can you maintain something that you really don't enjoy? But with that in mind, the gym can actually be a far safer environment than doing exercise outside or an activity. Many clients who do some form of activity are much more likely to injure themselves doing that activity, such as tennis, football, badminton, rugby. These are high impact sports, and because of that, you're far more likely to injure yourself. So it's something to consider, especially as you get older. The gym is a far more restrictive, which has its downsides, but it also has its good sides. You're far less likely to injure yourself in a gym if you're doing the exercises properly compared to if you're doing a sport. For example, long distance running or sprint outside is far less safe for your joints compared to running on the cross trainer inside a gym. So you will want to consider any injuries that you do already have. You may need to do some corrective work or some rehab work. Personally, in an ideal world, if you had an activity that you enjoy, you could do that once or twice a week and then be in the gym 2 to 4 times a week. Each sport tends to be quite restrictive in some respects. For example, football, there's a lot of stress on your lower body, especially your hamstrings and your ankles and knees, your hips. It does nothing for the chest or the shoulders or the triceps or the lower back in terms of strength. So a footballer would definitely benefit from doing strength training in a gym or the more restrictive work inside a gym as well as playing football, especially hamstring strengthening exercises, some mobility work, some balance and core work and stretching. And bringing together the gym accessory work with the football training outside will create a much more well-rounded football player. Anyway, moving on for everyone who doesn't plan on playing football. The next topic is how often should you train? On average, to achieve any reasonable change in a reasonable period of time, I definitely recommend at least training 3 to 6 times a week, and that's 1-hour sessions. 3 to 6 hours a week of training does sound like a lot to some people. There's 168 hours in a week, I think. If you're not willing to use up 6 of those hours to work on your health and fitness by exercising, then if I was you, I would reconsider my priorities and really question why it is that you think 6 hours is a long time out of 168 to just spend on bettering your health and fitness. Most people happily dedicate 14 hours a week to watching TV programs like EastEnders. So if you're still not sure about at least dedicating 3 to 6 hours a week, then I'd recommend you go back and watch the mindset video again. And if you haven't already watched that, then feel free to pause this one and watch the mindset video first and then come back to this. Your head has to be in the right place. That's why the mindset video is the first one of these 3 main topics. And if you're not willing to put in 3 to 6 hours a week, I don't really want to work with you. Anyway, I don't want to give you any advice. You don't really deserve it, if I'm being nice. That is me being nice, by the way. 3 to 6 times a week. That's before I know anything about your goals. Use 3 to 6 as a guidance, and then people that I'm working with, once you tell me your exact goal, we'll go from there and we'll see exactly what is necessary, because it does depend on a few things. Mainly your goal, your time frame, your commitment, and your availability. Talking of commitment, that's the next topic. Commitment. Generally speaking, all of this is generally speaking. Your commitment is what will get you your goal or not. As an extreme example, bodybuilders, it's not unheard of for them to train twice a day in the run up to their competition. That's anything for a 3 to 10 week period, depending on how they're looking and feeling. So that's 14 times a week. They'll do some cardio or conditioning in the morning and then weights in the evening. If your goal is fat loss, you can easily do 6 sessions a week of just general fat loss training. your body generally recovers quite well from that. There's not much fatigue or anything to worry about like that. And that's just 1 hour sessions. If your goal is strength training, then there's a lot of muscle groups. I'd recommend a good 4 to 6 days, because if you think chest, back, legs, shoulders, abs, biceps, triceps, 7 main muscle groups, and only doing those in 3 or 4 days is going to be quite a push. 1 hour workouts, so maybe 50 minutes, maybe 1 hour 20, but no more than that, unless you're doing it for athletic purposes. I say this because some people may be thinking, okay, well, I'm really busy Wednesday, so Tuesday I'm just going to do 3 hours of work, and then Wednesday I'm not going to do anything. I wouldn't recommend that, because your body generally works in a 24-hour clock. You want to burn more calories than you consume on a 24-hour basis. Monday, did I burn a few hundred calories more than I consumed? Yes, great. Tuesday, did I? Yes, great. You want that throughout the whole week to have overall fat loss throughout the whole week. If you start doing extreme hours on certain days, your body may go into starvation mode and be a lot less likely to release the fat. If you are going to train twice in that day, you want to have your calories higher, definitely. So if your goal is muscle building, you can work with a structured plan that divides up the different muscle groups that you're going to train on each day. This is so that each muscle gets an adequate rest. For example, on Monday, you might train chest and triceps. On Tuesday, you might train back and biceps. On Wednesday, you might train legs. Thursday, you could do shoulders and abs. That's 2 muscle groups a day, 4 days, and it's done. You want to give each muscle group time to rest. You don't really want to train chest and triceps on Monday, then on Tuesday do chest and biceps or chest and legs, because your muscle is actually built when you're not in the gym, when you're recovering. So if you're constantly putting your muscle under pressure when it's breaking down, when you're training it, the recovery period is going to be a lot harder and less efficient. Go in the gym, train the muscle, leave the gym, let your body recover for a certain period of time before training it. Ideally, recovery period is 12 to 72 hours. This is all general advice. I don't want nobody saying, oh, but this article says this article says this article says this. Generally speaking, okay? Again, athletes, it's not unusual for them to go 7 days or 6 days a week, or 7, and train the exact same muscle groups in pretty much the same or similar ways. And that's athletes. It's a different ball game. Risk is higher, reward is higher. So as a conclusion, anything less than 3 days or 3 days and less is pretty much just maintenance. You're just trying to maintain what you already have. You're not really striving to progress anywhere. 3 and down, maintenance. 4 and up, progress.